Welcome in, everyone. I hope your NFL season is going well, your personal life, however it's going. Thank you for being with us tonight on Pro Football Plus. Ben Parker here, as always, joined by Austin Freed and Shane Ratliff, the Iron Man. It is so good to have everybody on our panel here with us tonight talking NFL football. We're going to continue the very important in-depth discussion about head coaching candidates and openings that they might go to. Then we've got a scramble drill. We've got the lead story, reaction board, and then our final 60. So a real good show for you tonight. Let's get right to it. Shane, last week, you and I added some top candidates for head coaching guys. We did guys like Brian Johnson. We did guys like Brian Flores, Ben Johnson, Brian Flores. Sorry there. We added Mike Vrabel. I'm going to get you to add one more name to the list, starting to develop kind of a hardcore list that these NFL teams will be looking at. So go ahead and drop us your next name on the list, man.
The next one that popped up to me is, I think, especially with the way that the Bills have carried on, I would not be surprised if Joe Brady gets some conversation out of this. But the offensive coordinator up there had a quick run in Carolina, but I think he's going to be another one that gets his name out there. A younger coach, and the NFL is starting to let some of these younger guys in quicker.
Yeah, I agree. Joe Brady's not a stranger to a coaching list. His name's been lightly mentioned, and I feel like for sure when you see an offense cranking up this amazingly under Josh Allen, I feel for certain his name is working its way quickly up the list here. For those of you in our audience, maybe you didn't see our previous programming. Right here is the three NFL teams that already have the head coaching jobs available. The Jets, the Saints, the Bears, all going to be looking for new guys there. These are four teams that we thought were very much in danger, not necessarily saying for sure that they'll be open, but the Jaguars, the Giants, the Cowboys, the Bengals, very good chance that they'll be talking behind closed doors about what to do there to varying degrees. And then over here, the Raiders are quickly, we figure the Raiders' job is going to be open, but we're still waiting to see on that. And then Colts and Dolphins, we think are safe, but still kind of in limbo there as well. Austin, welcome back again this week. Go ahead and drop a name on the board for us here for head coaching candidates.
This isn't one necessarily I would look to hire, but his name's linked with one team in particular, and that's just the Raiders. So if the Raiders are shopping, Deion Sanders' name is definitely in that heavy consideration. I don't know if he would go anywhere else, and that would have to be on the caveat that that's where Shadur gets drafted, and likely the likely any Colorado player, and obviously his sons included in that.
So we're going to add more names to the board, probably, starting late December, well, early January is when we'll do that. But this is just kind of our lead list. So often this year and in previous years, you'll see these long lists, which is 20, 30, 40 names, and they'll certainly all get interviewed in different places. But this is a great starting point here. And Deion Sanders' name has already been mentioned with the Cowboys over the past few months. It's a long shot for him to be a head coach anywhere, but it's still fascinating because of that link that he has to Shador. That's a very unusual link. And so, yeah, there's a chance that a more open minded franchise like the Raiders might just bring him in because I don't know that they're necessarily going to have a shot at all of these top guys anyway. So, something to keep an eye out for. Shane, we're going to start pairing up a couple of these teams here tonight. We're going to lock up a couple of these jobs. So give us the guy that you think will go to a certain team, and let's work off of that. One coach, one team. We're going to lock it up.
Okay. I was in the very beginning just going to go off the top of the list and take a pairing with that, because I think Ben Johnson for a couple of these jobs is already interviewed. And I think he'll be the one that gets the thing. But thinking about this and actually looking at the list again, the connection I'd like to make is bring in Mike Vrabel for the Saints. I think that franchise needs a restart. I think Vrabel is a coach that gets player buy-in and will be able to pull a team together. I think he also knows that he doesn't care very much about offense. And in his times in Tennessee, he brought in Arthur Smith. He's brought in some other offensive coordinators that have gone on to do some other things. So I think he would go in there and start to look. And it's a team that has a lot of cap problems already, so you might as well change the culture where we're clearing some of that cap space.
See, I agree. Personally, I think Mike Vrabel fits in several spots. I like him in Chicago. I wouldn't mind him for the Jets. I wouldn't mind him for several of these spots that might open. But the Saints job certainly seems to be one where he could at least get them competing every week, even if the roster still has a lot of the cap issues that it's had for what 3 or 4 seasons now, where they've just really gotten carried away with some of this. Definitely like Vrabel there. So we're going to leave that pairing alone, whether it happens or not. This isn't a prediction. This is just, hey, Shane likes this and I like it. So we're going to leave that pairing alone. Austin, give me another coach and another team that you really like. Even if it doesn't happen, this is just what you really like here, coach with team.
And is this including any of the teams they have available, or just the three that have already canned their coach?
Any of the teams we have available here, man. If
Okay,
you think
cool.
that's a viable spot that's going to open up, yeah, let's hit them with a new head coach, man.
So the Bengals have a glaring need, and that's on the defensive side of the football. And Brian Flores fits that mold perfectly. He is a defensive guru. He is kind of the Ben Johnson, is the offensive guy. Brian Flores is the defensive guy to me at least. And the Bengals, they need defense. So I think that's what would make the most sense for both parties.
Yeah, I like that too. Brian Flores. To me, Flores, if he can get along with his GM, I think he fits in several places. Okay, I
Yeah.
really do. I like Flores. We talked about him last week. So Flores to the Bengals, that would help the defense out a lot. I'm going to go ahead and finish up with one here that's been mentioned several times over the past few weeks. So I'm not, reinventing the wheel here, but that'll be Aaron Glenn for the Jets. We're going to leave Ben Johnson alone because he's kind of going to get his pick of spots. But Aaron Glenn to the Jets has already been mentioned. We've seen the work that he's done there in Detroit with the defense. Already got a good defense waiting for him there in New York, and he'll just need to get an OC and a quarterback there in New York, and they can have a chance. So I've got Aaron Glenn there with the Jets. There's a very good chance you could see Glenn to the Jets. We've already heard that. Vrabel to the Saints could very well happen. And by the way, I'm going to get you guys' opinion. Would Ben Johnson even consider the Saints or the Jets? If he wouldn't, then there's a good chance that those franchises are being honest with themselves about that the Jets just go ahead and make a hiring before Ben Johnson even makes a decision, and the same thing for the Saints. So if they already know that Ben Johnson really isn't taking them very seriously as a landing spot, you could see both franchises move ahead. Shane, you first. If you're Ben Johnson, what's your top 2 or 3 spots here, and would you even really consider the Jets or the Saints?
Yeah, for me, part of that reason why I think Ben Johnson is going to get the most press in Chicago, even though it is an in division team. But I don't think he wants New York. I think the Saints might be a possibility, but the thing for him is in the interviews he had last year, it seems like he really is behind. I want a GM that's going to go to a very similar theory and plan to build a team as what I'm looking for. When he interviewed with Commanders last year, they hadn't made all those decisions on how the GM, ownership, everything else was going to fall through. And that was a sticking point for Ben Johnson. So I don't see him going to a team that's in complete disarray. I think he wants some things already scheduled and planned out for him before he'd make a move. So I think some of these teams, like the Jets right now, are a fire. I think that there's a lot of things that need to be set there. I don't see him being a guy that wants that to be his first go round as a head coach.
All right, so Chicago's a possibility for Ben Johnson. Austin, would Ben Johnson consider the Saints or the Jets very seriously? And if not, which one of these teams would you think he should most be looking at?
I think we've got it nailed with the Bears. I think the Bengals would be a great option for him if they were wanting to go his way. I personally, like I said, I think they need to lean more for a defensive-minded head coach. But imagine pairing up like Ben Johnson as the head coach and then just getting a guy of high caliber to be your defensive coach. I think there's several ways to handle the situation if you're a GM. But Ben Johnson's the cream of the crop right now. He has his pick, and there's only a handful of teams that I think he would seriously consider.
I'm going to go ahead and add the Jaguars here with a caveat. All right, and that caveat is that Trent Baalke is no longer there as general manager. I think the Jaguars are a great spot. They've got pretty good ownership. The ownership there has shown a willingness to do a lot of different things in a lot of different ways. It's a fun place to be at in terms of just weather and atmosphere. It's an easy division compared to a lot of other divisions that there are out there in football. It's just not as stout. And then you got Trevor Lawrence there. And if Ben Johnson has already worked with Jared Goff, he may in his mind think that he can work with Trevor Lawrence. So that's a spot to me that I would be interested in as well, even though it's not a great spot. The great spot is Cincinnati. And if I'm Ben Johnson, I'm even willing to wait another year and see if Cincinnati opens up because me getting to work with Joe Burrow, I'm basically set for life. I've got to really be bad if I can't win with Joe Burrow on some level when I already know I'm good at offense. So if I'm Ben Johnson, I am totally waiting to see if that Cincinnati job opens up. Even if I sit in Detroit for another year, I'd be totally willing to do that. All right. So at the moment, we like Flores to the Bengals just as a good pairing. Not that that's going to happen, but just a good pairing. We like Vrabel to the Saints would be a good pairing. Glenn to the Jets. Shane, final thoughts here on head coaching candidates. We'll touch it on it again in about 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, I agree with everything that we've kind of talked about already. I also mentioned like Deion Sanders to the Raiders. The other thing I thought about in that same boat where you're saying if you're Ben Johnson, there are some components to the Raiders, and it's a franchise that has always wanted to be dominant offensively. He might not be a bad spot there. And I think this second year of him being the top candidate is going to let him have a lot more power in these meetings with owners as we go forward.
Yeah, and I'll even add on to that. See, I agree. If I'm Ben Johnson, because let's say we don't think Cincinnati's ever going to open up, and we just move on. I don't hate the Giants either. The Giants have good ownership. I'm not sure about Joe Shane, the GM, but the Giants have good ownership, good fan base. The start of a roster rebuild that already happened 2 or 3 years ago when the last GM got moved out of the building. So and the Raiders as well. I wouldn't hate going to the Raiders. They want to win. It's a good support group. They just haven't been able to do it, so they're kicking guys out pretty quick. But any of these 4 teams, I wouldn't be thinking about the Jets if I'm Ben Johnson, and I wouldn't be thinking about the Cowboys, and I wouldn't be thinking about the Saints. Those 3 teams for me are just out if I'm Ben Johnson. I don't want to go to those places. But these other 4, I'd at least be talking to them seriously and seeing what we can work out here and see if I feel good about the place. Austin, final thoughts here on the head coach candidates.
I think we've got it pretty well sorted thus far.
Stay tuned. It's gonna be a lot of fun come January and February when these teams start moving. Let's move on here. Lead story. Got our reaction board here for the night. Got the Jets over the Jaguars. I got a reason for putting that game on the board. I know that was one of the lower tiered games of the week, but we'll get back to that in a second. The Eagles win the Battle of Pennsylvania against Pittsburgh. The Bills in what turned out to just be an offensive shootout with the Detroit Lions. The Buccaneers win their game. The Chiefs all over Cleveland in kind of just a smothering game. And then the Cowboys beat the Carolina Panthers and more easily than I expected. I'm going to go back to this Jets Jaguars game, and I want to talk to you guys about the better roster here. Okay, so instant reaction here. I figure at the moment the Jaguars have the better quarterback, but stay tuned on that. Which roster do you like better if you're a fan, if you're a coach, if you're the GM, however you want to look at it? Shane, you first. Jets, Jaguars, they're both sitting here at the bottom of the league, but which roster looks better to you right now?
I mean, I think it's a leadership issue with the Jets because when I look at their roster, they have offensive weapons, they have defensive weapons. I just think that they haven't been able to get out of their own way. So I would take the Jets roster over the Jaguars roster. Like you said, now quarterback play, neither has been great this year. But I think the Jets have the ability to pick up faster than the Jaguars do.
Austin, which roster do you like better?
It's not even close. It's the Jets by a landslide. I don't really understand how this is a question, to be honest.
Well, I'll tell you why. This is important, again, because when you're looking at getting ready for the offseason, not only as hiring a coach, bringing in a GM, Some of these places are more desirable than others. So it really is an important question because the Jets have the better roster, but it's also an older roster. You look across the board on defense, they tend to have older players, Sauce Gardner and Reed notwithstanding. And then again, they don't have their quarterback yet. So they're doing a restart button on the quarterback spot. Over in Jacksonville, you've got Trevor Lawrence, but the questions abound about him. So, I've got a young wide receiver to throw to. I've got some younger pieces on defense because I've not drafted too bad on defense the past 2 or 3 years there. I've got pieces to work with. So if you're a coach looking to go there, or if you're a GM looking to go there, which they may have both GM spots open if the Jaguars let go of Trent Baalke, it's a really big deal there. So Austin likes the Jets roster better. We'll come back to that question during the offseason. Eagles and Bills, if it was a Super Bowl matchup right now, based on the injuries they've got right now, the roster they've got right now, Shane, who you like?
Right now, if this game happened right now, I'd take the Bills. I think they're the hottest team right now. I think Josh Allen is playing at his best. If we go regular playoff scenario where we still got some regular season to play and then playoffs, I start to lean a little bit more for the Eagles. I think the offensive line play for the Eagles is always going to be dominant. And I think that their run game has produced more than the Bills. I think Josh Allen at some point is going to continue to take hits. It'll be hard for him to carry that team the whole way.
All right, Austin, you feel the same way? Buffalo over Philadelphia?
Actually, I really like Shane's take here. I think if it was like this next coming week, if these two teams were to play, I would take the Bills. But I think the Eagles I mean, not that the Bills don't have any playoff success, but the Eagles, I think, have a little bit more history. And although, Saquon, their kind of star player on the offense I know he's made it to the playoffs before, but never really any far. So I think that might be, but I mean, Jalen Hurts is the leader of that team. He would get them through. I think if this were to be the playoff or were to be the Super Bowl, you know, early February, I probably am leading the Eagles as well. But I think Shane nailed it though. Right now, the Bills are the hottest team in football.
Let me ask you this then, and it's the obvious question, but it's the one everybody's talking about. The Bills' offense is a thing of beauty right now, but their defense not so much. Even when healthy this year, they haven't been a shutdown defense. They've been a top 10-ish defense, 10, 11, 12, sometimes 8, depending on the metric you want to use. But right now, they're getting roasted. They've given up double 40s back-to-back weeks here. Shane, how much does that defense worry you, say, once they get to the AFC title game and the Super Bowl?
I mean, it definitely worries me, but the thing for that also is you have to say, the last game, that's Detroit. There's a lot of teams that are giving up 40 to Detroit. Detroit, on the opposite side, they literally don't have a defense left. I mean, there's 20 guys injured on that defense. The Bills have had a hard time keeping linebackers healthy. I think that hurts them again, like we said with the run game. The other thing is with Josh Allen, sometimes it's not great to have your quarterback make these amazing plays because you have 2 play drives and then your defense has to come back out and go against the offense. Sometimes that hurts them. That's the element where your quarterback being a superstar like that can hurt you every once in a while. But I don't think right now that their defense isn't going to start to get better. I think it's been a tough go for them, especially to face Detroit when Detroit wanted to try to run the score up.
All right, Austin, I'm going to let you lead off on this question here. The Cowboys beat the Panthers fairly solidly, really, there in Carolina. It just wasn't a super close game. So for the Cowboys, we're looking ahead to the offseason already. They have no playoff aspirations here. What do you feel about running it back? Mike McCarthy has had a lot of the players already speak up for him over the past few weeks. We talked about on last week's show how that Mike McCarthy, even if he were gone, the Cowboys don't get to pick from all the normal coaching candidates. They kind of have a smaller, more different pool of candidates. And then you're already under contract for Prescott and Lamb. So how do you feel about just going ahead and paying Parsons as well, even though it's going to add on the burdens, and doing some form of running it back again, similar to what Tampa Bay has done this year?
Um, I don't necessarily think the Tampa Bay situation. I don't know why that would be in. I think those are two very different situations, how Tampa Bay was last year and the Cowboys are this year. I don't necessarily hate it for the Cowboys. It wouldn't be the worst thing ever, but I think it does limit their upside. I guess is the short answer. Long answer gets into depth about everything I hate about Mike McCarthy. But the short answer is I just think they limit their upside by keeping him.
Fair enough. All right, that's our reactions board for the night. I've got a scramble drill for y'all tonight that I'm really excited about. Not because it's an in-depth stat. It's not even as in-depth as the ones we usually do, but just because I think you guys are going to do really good at it. Okay, and y'all been pretty good at these already. So here it is. This is tonight's scramble drill. The topic of the evening, and give me a second, I'm gonna move this thing over a little bit here. Topic of the evening is odds to win this year's Super Bowl. Okay. So I've got the top 10. They're all mixed up. And I really think you guys are going to do an excellent job of this tonight. In this case, these are the worst odds right here, 4,000 plus 4,000. Here's the best odds at plus 400. Three teams are fairly close at 430 and 460. All right. So those three teams are fairly close, not a huge difference there. Then you've got one team here kind of by themselves at plus 525. Then there's a big, big step down here to the fifth spot, which is 850. And then another huge, massive step down to 6 and 7, which is 1300 and 1400. But again, the teams are all out of order as they usually are. This time, I'm not looking at tiers. I'm curious to see if you guys can actually get them in order. Okay, 1 through 10. I'm curious to see how many y'all could actually get, but I think y'all be pretty close. I figure if you get 8 of these in the right spot, you've done really well because we're working with 10 tonight. Okay, so Austin, go ahead and lead the conversation a little bit here and work your way through it and see what magic we can work up.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first five are kind of self-explanatory. You've got the orders, notwithstanding the order here, but it's going to be the Bills, Lions, Eagles, Ravens, Chiefs in some order. I would put Chiefs as fifth on that. Probably the Ravens fourth. And then I think the first three you can mix up however way you want. Shane, do you have an opinion there?
Yeah, I think like you said, I think it's probably Lions, Bills, Eagles, Ravens, Chiefs.
Yep.
I think probably the last one is going to be the Texans. Um, then probably Pittsburgh, Tampa Bay, Green Bay, Minnesota, probably in that.
Um, okay. I like Minnesota, Green Bay. You would I would think the Steelers would be higher than the Buccaneers with how good their record is and everything, but the Bucks are playing hot right now. Hmm, that's tough.
I don't disagree with you on that. I just picked Tampa Bay because I think if you're on the bet side, you'd go, okay, this is probably more than what we're looking at than do we think that Pittsburgh's going to continue on their way?
So, okay, I think the question, how updated, when did you get these odds? Were these today, Ben?
This was Monday night. So we're looking at about 20 hours ago after the Monday
Okay.
night game.
Okay. So I do think the Bills would have jumped the Lions in the front, probably. So I like Bills, Lions, Eagles, Ravens, Chiefs. Um, and then I like Vikings, Packers, these last three. Because I like the Texans, man. I think the Texans are a really good team. I just don't know if the general public is as high on the Texans as I am. Um, Personally, I would go Texans, Steelers, Bucks.
I'd be
That's
okay
how
with that.
that's how I would rank these three, but I don't necessarily know if Vegas agrees.
I would agree with that. I think the thing for the reason why I put the Texans in the back is I just think that they've been too up, too down this year. And normally
Mhm.
when you're looking for betting, they try to go for as close to the number as you can get. So if you think that the Texans are going to falter and they don't have anything that sticks out, that's why I thought they'd be in the back. But like you're saying, if I'm picking teams, if I have to go, this is the game that we're going against, I'd put the Texans in front of Pittsburgh and Tampa Bay as well.
Yeah. Okay. Let's rock with this then.
All right, so we like the order. Bills as the most favored, Lions and Eagles not far behind them, with the Ravens as the fourth team, Chiefs as the fifth, then the Vikings and Packers. Both that 6, 7 spot right there is close, no matter which helmet you like. And then the other three teams, we like that tier right there.
Mhm.
All right, let's check it out. I'm going to do it a little bit different this week. Instead of just dropping the whole bar, I'm going to reveal one team at a time here. You're already going to take a look at it anyway when it disappears. All right, never mind that. All right, so here we go. The Bills, you got that right. They are the favored team. That switched after that win over the Lions. Okay, no surprise there. Lions have actually dropped to number 3 at the moment. And again, for those of you wondering, this is Caesar's Sportsbook. This is where I picked this up at. Probably should have mentioned that before. Caesar's Sportsbook. Right now, the Eagles are second, and the Lions are third, probably due to all the injuries, I'm sure, as y'all have already mentioned. This is one big switch right here. The Chiefs are not too far behind these three teams at plus 525. They are the clear fourth, but not too far away. And the Ravens on a tier all by themselves at plus 850. So y'all got that very close in the front end. This was the hard end right here, no question about it. Y'all got the Vikings and Packers perfect. The Texans going to move here. Steelers move back here. And then y'all got the Buccaneers right. So what is that? How do we want to count that? Probably 7 or 8 out of the 10? Probably 8.
No, well, we flipped the Eagles and Lions, we flipped the Chiefs and Ravens, and we flipped the Steelers and Texans.
Probably
Yeah.
7, I guess. Yeah. All right. I like it. Shane, I'll ask you first, just looking at these odds. Is there anything you disagree with here? I know this is influenced by a lot of things, public perception, public money, etc. Is there anything here that just jumps out at you? You're like, no, I think this odds should be different.
I mean, like I said, when we picked I think the Chiefs are in a tough spot this year. I think uh, any Caesar Sportsbook, any betting facility, I worry about who's ever playing left tackle for the Chiefs and how much more of a beating Patrick Mahomes can take before he's got to sit. That's my big worry for them. That's why I'd put them a little bit back before the Ravens. But I mean, like we said, I think the Bills going on this hot streak has really bumped them ahead of where many people would have put them before. I think, like you said, when we talked about the other segment, they and Detroit, with the amount of injuries and the way the defense is playing, I'd worry about them no matter what. But I think people, especially in my neck of the woods, will jump on a Bills team as quickly as they possibly can, especially when it's offense. Um, Josh Allen has really ingrained himself in that area. And I think just on a national standpoint, they just like to see a guy that goes out there that plays backyard football. As much as people want to talk about statistics and analytics and things like that, they still like to see somebody run around and throw the ball as far as he possibly can, as hard as he possibly can. And Josh Allen brings that to a lot of people.
Austin, anything, one team jump out here on the odds that you would say, hey, I'd put money on that, maybe change it up a little bit?
I'm just looking at sheer value. I think the Lions, man, being the third best or the third odds, I still think they're a fantastic team. And then the Ravens down there below the Chiefs, I just can't necessarily get behind that. I think the Ravens are a really good football team. I know they have struggled defending the pass, but I mean, that can be very matchup dependent. And when playoff time comes, they've said this for years. It's about, running the football, and especially in cold weather, if you're in a rough environment, like it's not that easy to pass the football in the playoffs. So I think the Ravens team is built for the playoffs, and I think they'll be really solid.
One thing we haven't seen in past years, the Ravens giving up a lot of points. The Lions, because of injuries, giving up a lot of points. The Bills giving up a lot of points here. It's very unusual to see three teams this high on the Super Bowl odds list giving up this many points, but there's a very good chance one of them just goes straight through and wins the whole Super Bowl this year. So stay tuned as always. While I show our network, Shane, give us your final 60.
My final 60 is college football. And we talked about last week the Army-Navy game. Congratulations for Navy pulling that out. But the thing I wanted to talk about is the complete and utter disarray that's going on with these playoff teams. Penn State's the one I'll pick on number one. When your backup quarterback has to decide if he's going to go into the portal or not as you're preparing to play a playoff game. And this is a backup quarterback who's played an awful lot for Penn State. He is part of their offense. And you have James Franklin go and say, like, this is a kid that didn't want to leave us, and he has to make this decision because if he wants to play, he's got to make a move. A lot of coaches are coming out and saying that we need somebody to step in and do something. I think the NCAA is one of the worst organizations in the history of mankind in what they allow and then what they try to pull back on. I don't know when this is going to change or if they'll find somebody to be in charge of it, but tough for those teams to be in the playoff to find that you're going to miss players that you really need going forward.
I'm going to stay here. Austin, I'll get to your final 60 in just a second. I'm going to stay here on college football, even though it's a completely different thing. But Shane, you're right. The chaos is abounding there, and it wouldn't take a lot to just change the windows on this a little bit, and at least you'd have one problem fixed, right? You don't fix all the problems, but at least you wouldn't have all these players being distracted while they're trying to get ready for pretty significant playoff games here. They could at least push that decision off until their games are all done and then move on, say, come in late January. I'm going to talk about Marshall football here for just a second. Some of you in the audience have heard, some of you have not, but Marshall decided to fire their football coach because he did struggling to have any kind of winning record, but I believe they actually won the conference this year in the playoff game that they had. They decided to fire the coach anyway because it just hadn't been good. But the players really liked him so much, in fact, that there has been a complete walk-off of a whole bunch of these players from Marshall heading to the transfer portal in mass, so much so that Marshall doesn't even have enough players to play in their bowl game. They have had to back out of the bowl game that they were now scheduled to play in because so many players left because of the coach that got fired. Marshall has since, it looks like, been replaced by Louisiana Tech in said bowl game, but it's a huge mess there. And listen, I understand if you're the Marshall administration, you've kind of looked at things and decided we're moving off of this guy. But you kind of got to know the temperature of the program here a little bit. If you're so disconnected that you don't realize your players love this guy, you are too disconnected to your football program, all right? So you need to get a clue next time, maybe get a feeling for what these players actually like. And if he shows a spark at the end of the season like they did, maybe get a clue there too. Maybe keep him for another year or two. You're Marshall. What have you really got to lose? All right. This isn't Alabama or Penn State or something. You really have nothing to lose by keeping a guy here like this for another season or two. Austin, your final 60, man.
Well, I'm changing mine on the fly. My final 60 is breaking news. Straight from the horse's mouth, the Atlanta Falcons Twitter account has announced that Michael Penix Jr. will be their starter moving forward.
Wow. There it is, man.
So
Good job,
my final
Austin
60
Schefter.
goes to, yes, thank you. My final 60 goes to my quarterback evaluation of Michael Penix last year, I guess. I think he'll be okay. It really can't get that much worse than what Kirk was doing. So I think this is the right move, the smart move. You got to see what you got in him. It's making that draft pick that I thought was horrible at the time, maybe seem like a good pick. So if he comes out and balls out the last few weeks, their whole like draft evaluation from last year gets a totally different grade from me.
Breaking news here by Austin, man. I appreciate it. All right, way to go. And with that, everybody, we're going to send you out on a boom here. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We will be back next week, but it will probably be on Monday night of next week, not Tuesday night, due to all the Christmas festivities that I'm sure a lot of you will be enjoying. Us as well on Christmas Eve, so we won't be recording on Christmas Eve. We'll be probably doing it one day before. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. As always, have a great week. Enjoy the NFL. Goodbye.